Welcome back to Half A Hot Rods. If you haven't been here before, my name's Adam. I'm just a regular guy with no specific amount of talent, time, the right tools, or real budget to work on old cars and trucks. But we're here to show you that you don't need all that stuff. As long as you stick to it, keep going, keep learning from your mistakes, you can figure it out. What you see behind me is a 3-year project, 1957 Chevy pickup on a 1997 Chevy chassis. And when we left off, I just got the fenders fitted. Since then, I spent, I don't know, a whole day, 2 days? 2 days, I think, fitting and welding the fenders further. And you could say they're basically, show ready. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. Get out of the way, dog. I had to figure out what I was going to do with the back of the bed to close it in, because I got excited and chopped it off and bobbed it. And like I've said before, if you've been here a while, this truck's going to do truck stuff. It's not just to, go to cruises or car shows. I want to haul stuff with it. That's why it's got a fuel-injected big block. So I need a hitch on the back. Well, if you go way back in the videos when I was deciding what bed to put on it, somebody, even though he had doubts at the time, somebody cut like 6 inches off the back of the frame. You know who that was, Hubcap? Hubcap? Yeah. Well, let's just say that guy's my worst enemy. But, so now my frame is a little short, and you can see that the hitch is kind of recessed from where the end of my bed's going to be. So I'm figuring that out. I looked at some hauler beds, and I got, since the last time I saw you, I got this last piece of the bed cut and folded down a little, so a little bit Western haulery. But the hitch is kind of sucked in there. So I saw one bed, and that's all it took, where the guy had recessed a panel and attached it to the frame, so when the bed comes off, that panel stays there as a filler. So I got to thinking, maybe I can do that. So here's what I did. I went out to my wife's truck and the trailer, and I got a bunch of measurements. The bumper to the center of the ball in the truck's about 7 inches. The angle of the trailer tongue's about 108 degrees. It's actually less. It's only 95 when you go to the corners of the toolbox, because that's the first thing that's going to hit. The trailer ball is about 7 3/4 from where it starts to make a triangle on the front of the trailer. 27.5 inches to the toolbox. The overall hitch height is like 10 to 12 inches because it's adjustable. Anyway, so those are the measurements I got off the trailer. This is just, I measured the frame rails on the truck to see how wide they were for my filler panel. And then I cut out a section. Then I cut out this section, and I cut a small piece of cardboard to slide in there up against, up by the hitch, which is okay-ish. You could close it in this way. And then I took my measurements off the trailer, and I made a little mock trailer tongue so that I could see where it would end up. And if we put the trailer at the same angle on my wife's truck, a factory GM engineered ball, it would be about that far out from the truck. So I won't be able to make super tight turns with it, but I think it'll work under normal use. All along I was playing with the idea of using this tailgate on the back. That's why this width is what it is, because that was the same width as a stock bed. But I think what I just came up with is we're going to take this tailgate and we're going to cut out basically this section, and that's going to be my filler panel tucked back in here. We might even put a little light in there or something to light it up at night, or maybe just the brake lights coming down on it. I gotta figure out where I'm going to put my license plate though, because I don't want to cover that up. But I think this is going to be the filler panel, and then we'll figure out what to do with license plate. I think there'll be plenty of room for it out here if I want to do that, because my tail lights will probably be up here. Yeah, that's probably the solution for that. So if you know anything about these tailgates, even in this condition, people will pay good money for them. So the last one I had that was an extra, I sold for $150. So I really hope by cutting this up that I can make it work, because if not, I'm just basically setting fire to $150, which is a lot in my budget. So anyway, let's get rolling and see what we can do with this thing, and see if we can't close some of this in and finish things out a little bit. Well, we got a whole bunch of stuff partway done on the back of this bed, but I think I need to figure out where this bumper is going to go. Yes, this is a perfectly good old school dealership etched, engraved, cut in bumper, and I cut it in half because this old girl's wider than she used to be. So we're going to see if we can make the outsides fit like bumperettes, maybe. Let's see what happens. Yes, yes, oh yes. So, we gotta get something mounted solid so that we can do the rest of it. And that something probably needs to be the 4x4 pipes, or square tubes. But in order to do those, I'm going to do some cutting. Oh, that's cool. That's going to be nice. And we'll still get all our lettering. Yes, yes. And we'll still have the old school bumper style for a step. And then we'll just fill this in with plate, and it will be super, super cool. Okay, it's about 2 hours later now, and we did a lot of cutting and grinding and test fitting, and a lot of cutting and grinding and test fitting, and propping up and knocking things down and things falling over, and discovering that my hitch hole is not centered where I cut it. But I think we've got the square tube pretty well fitted the way it needs to meet that. If we move the square tube in to where it is now versus out here, then we can weld the tailgate panel to it. If we move these in, then we can weld that panel to it. I wish I'd left it longer, then I could have left them out there. But that will also leave room for the bumper corners to fit up, and I test fitted those, and you'll have to wait to see that because it's a pain. But by moving it in, the bumpers fit better. The tailgate panel fits better. The only thing I'll have to adjust is here. I've marked this, so we'll cut it. So, yeah. Once we cut that, I'm also going to trim these nubs off that I didn't clean up because I didn't think they were going to be in the way, but now they're in the way. So we'll do some cutting and grinding and cutting and grinding and test fitting, and then we'll come back and show you where we're at. And I could show you all that, but do you really want to watch a montage of cutting and grinding with music that, you know, isn't what any of us really want because I don't want to get copyright violations? I didn't think so. I'll be right back. So we're about somewhere between 1.5 and 3 days between the last clip and now worth of work. Somewhere around 2 weeks worth of actual time because, you know, you got other stuff to do. So do I. And I've done a lot of cutting and grinding and cutting and fitting and recutting and fitting and a little bit of welding. And let me show you where we're at. Yeah, I didn't tell you that there was a lot of cutting that involved cardboard, and there's still a lot of cutting and grinding metal left to go. But the center section is all at least tacked together, except for that plate that is in the middle that's a 1/2 inch too short. Brilliant, right? I even made a cardboard template and I still cut it a ½ inch too short. So, note to self, cut outside all of my lines when I use my templates to lay out my metal pieces. But I think this is more or less how it's going to look. The bumpers are just resting on a piece of clamped steel, so we've got to build brackets for those. The plate will be pretty much all flat pieces cut in weird shapes to fit the holes. And then the tail lights will go in here. And the license plate I think we'll put the license plate on a hinge and put it right here, and then it'll flip down when we're using the hitch. And it'll just have its own self-contained light at the top. So, what's this move? That maybe? Yeah, I made a cardboard template and still cut it too short. Brilliant, right? That's how it goes when you don't know what you're doing. But, there it is. Several days work. Cut, fit, jack it up, stack wood blocks, figure it out. I am not a welder, and you can tell that by my welds. I've got it tacked together enough to bring Wyatt in here and have him do the finish welding on the parts that can be seen, on some of it, and the structural welding on stuff that needs to be structural. But I am pretty happy with how that's going to look. So, now all I got to do is cut it all out of metal, weld it together. Super easy if I was a better welder and apparently measure and cutter. Here we go. Be right back. Alright, I've been out here hustling for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours now. And I decided that before I put these panels on, I probably ought to figure out how to put the taillights in. And I'll show you those in a little bit. I'll just tell you they're round. And I was trying to figure out how I'm going to put them in these that are going to be slanted and still have the taillights be on the same plane as the back of the truck, as in flat. So this is what I came up with. I'll give you 3 guesses what these are. Think about that. So these took some fabric cobbling, and I utilized, this is something I had laying around. That's an old door that I took apart. If you're going to take old doors apart, keep in mind that if you just cut into them, they probably have cardboard or paper inside them, so you could have a fire. I didn't. Somebody warned me about that ahead of time, or I would have. So I just pried it apart and everything went pretty smooth. Then I played around with my template, a cardboard one, and you can see there were a couple of attempts here. And what I finally figured out was the hole needed to be the same height as what I'm putting through it, but it needed to be wider because when we stand this up, it's going to be like that, and I want my light to be like that. So I held it up. I don't have enough hands to hold the, well, maybe I could put you in the tripod. Hold on. I've got a mark on the bed that's the same angle as this. So if I put this here at that angle, I can put this in, and then it'll still sit even with the back end of the bed. So use this to make a template. Lay the template out on the metal. Now it's do or die time because I've got this all cut and ground and ready to fit. And if I mess this up, then I'll have to start over. So hopefully I don't mess it up, and it'll just fit, and everything will work on the first try, and we'll be good to go. Here we go. It was supposed to fit tight. Cigarette, I head off to sleep. The gambler, he broke even, and in his final words I found an ace that I could keep. Got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fall 'em, know when to walk away.
You are welcome.
That's what I was looking for. Alright, we got these taillights mounted up, but I didn't show you how I made the taillights. We started out with some Chinese ATV wheels, some sheet metal that I pulled off of some old doors, and here, you go watch that while I figure out how to make the brackets for this bumper. Be right back. So for the bumperettes, I want them to be functional and be able to step on them, so I'm making extra heavy duty brackets. They'll tie to the uprights here, and then I'll probably run another brace down to them, and they'll attach to where the old toolboxes were underneath. And I gotta do a little more grinding before I put that one on. Alright, we got everything marked and measured and booger welded to the bumper bracket wise, so now I think we're ready to slip it up under there. I tacked it once and then I had to trim it and bring it in some, so we'll get back up under there and see if we can tack it again, and maybe then we can start really welding. So I don't know if you remember how long ago we started this, because I've kind of lost track, and it's been at least a couple months. But my idea was, before I could figure out where to run my exhaust, I got to figure out what I'm doing with the back of the bed. So I just, on a whim one day, cut the back of the bed off and said, I'll figure out how to modify it later. Well, later turns out to be, I think we're 3 or 4 months in, of 4 hours here, 5 hours there. And it's not done, but it's really close. It's closer than it's ever been. So that's something I'm pretty excited about, and I'm pretty happy with how it's going. Ready? Here we go. Got the other two tail lights out so I can get the right pigtails for it, but yeah. I've got a couple more panels for this section right here, but honestly, I don't know whether I'm going to put those in or if I'm just going to weld this up flat against there and call it good. Wyatt and I were debating about whether I should buy a 10-pound roll of welding wire last time. I bought a 10-pounder and I've gone through it, and 90% of that has been on the back of this truck. So yeah, we knocked 500 pounds off, but we probably put 200 pounds of steel back on it and then another 10 pounds of welding wire. So bonus points if you know what those taillights are out of or what they're intended for, because they're not intended for a 57 Chevy, just like everything else on this truck. Oh, that's pretty much how the back of this truck's going to look. I'm so excited about it. I bit off way more than I could chew on this, but I slowed down, figured it out one step at a time, and that's what I've been trying to prove on this channel. If I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Check out the other videos. Click like, subscribe, come back and see us again. Thanks.